Probably 95% of all the sightings that happen more or less accidentally have more to do with them being curious about us than the other way around. Apply the same scientific principles that they espouse to that film and tell me it isn't real. Don't forget, science is an attitude. It's not machines. Science is an attitude of questioning. Not doubting, but questioning.
It looks to be like a large primate, but it doesn't seem to match the body structure of the living apes, of chimpanzees or gorillas being the most prominent ones. It seems like its legs are too long, and when gorillas walk on their hind legs, they're not hunched over like that, they're more upright.
The way it comes out of the trees is what we call a Groucho walk. It's very typical of what witnesses say Bigfoot walks.
Before you decide whether Bigfoot is real or ridiculous, hear this. The deeper we looked, the harder the answers became. Because some encounters don't just challenge belief, they challenge reality itself. For decades, Bigfoot has existed in a strange tug-of-war between belief and doubt. Some point to encounters, tracks, and unexplained sounds deep in the forest. Others dismiss the whole subject as misidentification, myth-making, or outright trickery. The tension between both sides has shaped the creature's entire legacy. Yet, when the arguments are stripped down and studied closely, the skepticism surrounding Bigfoot isn't as airtight as it first seems. Critics often begin with the lack of physical remains. No bones, no fossils, no preserved bodies. But in reality, fossilization is rare, especially in the damp, acidic, heavily wooded environments where sightings tend to occur. Even known animals such as gorillas, cougars, and large ungulates leave behind almost no fossil record within their current habitats. In the wilderness, carcasses vanish fast. Scavengers scatter remains. Moisture dissolves bone. Within weeks, nature wipes away nearly all traces, and the biological samples that do surface, unidentified hairs, partial DNA sequences, tissue fibers, continue to generate debate, with some showing characteristics not fully matching any documented species. Then there is the argument that no Bigfoot has ever been captured. But throughout history, many large species were considered impossible until they suddenly weren't. The okapi was once a hunter's tale. The coelacanth was believed extinct for 65 million years until a fisherman pulled one from the deep. Today, more than 300 million acres of untouched North American wilderness remain, massive, inaccessible, and largely unmonitored. Within those spaces, a highly cautious, highly intelligent species could avoid people for generations. Skeptics also reference hoaxes, and yes, those exist. But the existence of forgeries doesn't erase the thousands of reports made by hunters, biologists, park rangers, law enforcement officers, and trained outdoorsmen. People capable of recognizing wildlife and distinguishing it from imagination. Tracks showing dermal ridges, mid-tarsal breaks, and weight distribution patterns beyond simple fakery have been cast and studied for decades. The Sierra sounds continue to puzzle audio experts with vocal ranges that don't fit known animals. The lack of clear photographs is another sticking point, but encounters almost always happen in low light, dense brush, or in moments of shock. Even professionals struggle to capture known wildlife under those conditions. The Patterson Gimlin footage, scrutinized for over half a century, still resists any definitive debunking. Sightings vary, sizes differ, colors shift, behaviors change. But variation is natural in wildlife. The core description stays the same: a towering, hair-covered biped, unlike any known species. In the end, skepticism persists. So does belief. But across cultures, continents, and centuries, the same figure appears again and again. Coincidence? Or a pattern hinting at something real? On October 13, 2024, Mike was driving through the Pennsylvania State Forest with no intention of searching for anything unusual. But a sudden movement between the trees caught his eye, clear enough to make him stop the car. Instinct kicked in. He pulled out his phone and began recording from a safe distance. Whatever was there stayed partly concealed, shifting just beyond the tree line. Mike never got close enough to identify it, and the footage offers no easy answers. Something was moving back there. Whether hiding, watching, or simply passing through, he still isn't sure. Skeptics often repeat the same line. It's blurry, it's unclear, it could be anything. And honestly, they're not wrong. Most modern footage is a mess of shaky hands, zoomed pixels, and last-second panic. But that's exactly why it's worth looking back to a time when hoaxes were far harder to pull off. Take the 1996 Bigfoot Memorial Day footage, filmed on May 26 near Chapaka Lake, Washington. Lori Perte captured it on a high 8mm camcorder during a simple Memorial Day fishing trip. No drones, no special effects, no CGI. The clip shows a dark, upright figure sprinting across an open field before disappearing into the trees. Supporters praise the fluid motion and body proportions. Skeptics call it a man in a suit. Personally, I'm stuck in the middle, leaning toward no. My first reaction is always the same. That's probably a guy in camo. But then, on the second viewing, questions surface. Would a normal hiker sprint that fast on uneven terrain? Why risk twisting an ankle miles from help? And why does the figure appear covered in a consistent, uniform shade from head to toe? With a body mass that seems to stretch taller mid-stride? Some viewers even label it the second best Bigfoot footage after Patterson Gimlin. I disagree. The Freeman film has far more weight and detail. This one sits in my intriguing but inconclusive category. Not proof, but not easily dismissed either. So what do you think? A genuine anomaly? Or just another hiker caught at the wrong moment? Before we go any deeper, we have to talk about one of the most debated clips in Bigfoot history. The Harley Hoffman footage. Many viewers still call it one of the few recordings that actually feels real. The bristling hair on the creature's neck, the weight in its movements, the stride, all details that are hard to fake. Even if you doubt it, Hoffman's own words hold weight.
They're insatiably curious. Probably 95% of all the sightings that happen more or less accidentally have more to do with them being curious about us than the other way around. He wanted us to find him. There's no other way we would have. No other way. I've seen it. I mean, it's absolutely real. I'm telling you, apply the same scientific principles that they espouse to that film and tell me it isn't real. Don't forget, science is an attitude. It's not machines. Science is an attitude of questioning. Not doubting, but questioning.
Nearly 18 years later, his footage remains a battleground of opinions. So, what do you think? Authentic encounter or clever hoax? On October 30th, 2013, just before midnight, brothers Joel and Jonathan Brown captured a piece of thermal footage that continues to split the Bigfoot community right down the middle. The image appears to show the head, shoulders, and upper torso of a large figure standing motionless on their property, far bigger and broader than a typical human silhouette. Some see undeniable anatomy, others see nothing more than a heat anomaly or misinterpreted background. The clip is brief, ambiguous, and impossible to ignore. What do you see? Because later in this video, we'll compare it to another remarkable thermal capture. When the Legend Hunters team arrived in Eufaula, Oklahoma, they weren't stepping into a blank slate. They were stepping into a region shaped by generations of eyewitness stories, warnings, and encounters, some recent, others passed down through the community like unspoken truths. Their mission wasn't just to search the woods, it was to listen, to gather the stories that locals often keep tucked away because they fear being dismissed, laughed at, or labeled crazy. In places like these, Sasquatch isn't a punchline, it's part of the landscape.
Yay! Hey, I'll make it all right? Yeah. Good to see you. Thank you for having me. Glad you're here today.
I'm excited to hear these stories, and I'm excited to hear what the elders have to share with us today. There must be a lot of sightings in this area, is that correct?
Yeah.
If you got hot spots where you think he might be showing up, please let us know, because that's what we're after. We're here to find evidence
Their first stop was with the elders, people who've lived long enough in the area to understand its secrets. And the moment the team began asking questions, the stories started flowing. Not vague sightings or embellished tales, but experiences delivered with the matter-of-fact tone of people recalling events exactly as they happened. One man described a scream so intense it made her hair stand on end, an animalistic howl that didn't match any known creature in the region. Another recounted the sound of trees shaking, snapping, moving in the darkness when nothing visible could explain it. And then there were the striking, more dramatic encounters.
One day they were coming back from town. They went down to make a beer run. Pulled in there real fast, and the light shined on the Bigfoot. And they all seen it.
A Bigfoot illuminated by headlights during a late-night beer run, or a massive orange-colored figure watching two young cousins from behind a tree as they sat on the trunk of an old car. The details from entirely different people carried the same undercurrent: size, presence, smell, and above all, intelligence. What stood out even more wasn't just the variety of stories, but their consistency. Most pointed toward one main artery cutting through this wilderness, Highway 9.
Are y'all smelling that?
I am. What is that?
I don't know. It's a strong odor.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened so fast. We didn't even have time to get ready for anything.
That smell.
Yeah, I can hear it. Did you hear that?
Hey guys. It's footsteps.
Nearly every storyteller referenced it. Sightings near the road, sounds in the surrounding woods, shadows crossing the tree line at dusk. Highway 9 didn't seem like a coincidence. It seemed like a pattern. Local insights quickly turned into actionable clues. That's why legend hunters followed Elder John to a place that carries both physical and cultural weight: Honeycomb Bluff.
Right back over here, over the fence line. He's sitting right there looking at the movie there. Well, there'd be like two sets of eyes just right there. And I'd be like, hey, what is that over there? They're like, oh, it's raccoons. I go, looks bigger than coons to me. The cows are too short to do that.
You know, it's pretty active.
But I just know they're around here. You know, for some reason they like it here. This is where they climb over right here. See how it's all pushed down?
Oh, yeah.
They climb over there and get in there. Who does that? We didn't do that. That's not, my family does not do that. We do not mess up our fence lines.
A rugged mountain region riddled with caves, cliffs, and natural hideouts. The area's history is woven deeply into Muskogee Creek tradition. Stories of warriors, rebellions, and even the legendary CO.AG, who, according to oral history, once took refuge in these cliffs and learned spiritual medicine songs from a clan of Bigfoots said to live there. To outsiders, this may sound mythical, but to the people here, these accounts aren't metaphors. They're part of the community's inherited memory.
There's numerous stories about CO.AG. When he got hurt and running from the military, he came out here and hid. CO.AG was a hero to the Muskogee Creek people. He ran the Crazy Snake Rebellion for the Muskogee Creeks. You know, he was the one that stood up to the U.S. government.
The government was trying to treat him like they were treating Sitting Bull and Geronimo. They were trying to discredit him in his efforts to uphold the treaties.
We had an agreement with the U.S. government to give up our homeland.
From Honeycomb Bluff, the hunt moved 2.3 miles south toward Mill Creek, another hotspot. The team walked the narrow back roads, pointing out water access, thick foliage, and natural hunting choke points. Anywhere with food, cover, and escape routes is a potential travel corridor for wildlife. And in this landscape, the same logic could apply to something bigger, something smarter. Tracks, some possibly human, some definitely animal, crisscrossed the soft ground. Ripples surfaced in the water as if something had just slipped beneath it. Locals mentioned tunnels beneath the bank, places where even large animals could hide or travel unseen. One man described a creature swimming under his fishing boat before rising on the opposite shore, a detail baffling in both its behavior and coordination.
And he had a story of seeing one on the shore. And it swam, and it came to him and his friends that were in the boat that was fishing, and it went under the water all the way underneath their boat across to the other side of the shore and got out and walked into the woods.
Each element alone might be easy to shrug off, but together they formed a map, a behavioral outline, a picture of a creature using the environment with precision. The final step was technology. On private land believed to be a regular travel route, the team set up night vision trail cams facing each other, designed to catch anything attempting to avoid detection. It was the right idea, but like most serious Bigfoot hunts, the forest gave them silence. No images, no creature. Just the lingering sense that something was out there, but too cautious to be caught. After a week of combing through northeastern Oklahoma, the legend hunters didn't walk away with proof, but they did walk away with direction.
He got close, huh?
Yeah, it was right in front of me, and then that's when we walked away because we thought it was a boar, but I heard footsteps.
Dang, it's walking in there.
Yeah, that ain't no boar.
With patterns, with stories that matched too closely, too frequently, to be dismissed. So they headed back to Wetumpka, not defeated, but recalibrated. Because in this kind of search, every clue is a breadcrumb, and Oklahoma had given them plenty. On November 27, 2025, Mike from Mike Wanders set out alone into one of the most historically charged Bigfoot regions in North America, the forests surrounding Harrison Hot Springs and Harrison Lake, British Columbia. This isn't just a scenic wilderness, it is the ancestral home of the Chehalis people, who have spoken of Sasquatch for thousands of years.
Wood knocks, what sounds like trees coming down, orbs, you name it. Also, he recommended coming out here when everybody else leaves. He's done that a couple times, or he's stayed a couple days past when everybody leaves at the end of the weekend. And that's when apparently he gets activity. So that's what I've done. It's Sunday night, everybody has driven out of here.
Their stories eventually shaped the modern word Sasquatch, and the region earned its unofficial title, the Sasquatch capital of Canada. Knowing this history, Mike went in with respect and caution. He took advice from local residents, people familiar with the terrain and with the strange, unexplained things that sometimes happen deep in Mystery Valley. From the start, it was clear he wasn't doing a casual camping trip. He was here for something very specific, and Mystery Valley wastes no time.
Small tree, big rock, something along those lines. There's landslides all the time here. But the thing is, it's not raining or anything right now. This is when most landslides usually happen. So much of this is just going to be you taking my word for things, because I'm filming less than 1% of the time that I'm actually out here, right? So.
On his first night, as darkness folded over the forest, a single sharp clack echoed through the trees. Not a twig snapping, not a branch falling, a clean, deliberate knock. 5 seconds later, a second one. Classic wood knock behavior, heard around the world in Bigfoot research. Mike had his thermal camera rolling, hoping for a third, but the valley went silent again. The timing of the knocks was intentional enough to make him pause, and subtle enough to keep him guessing. The deeper he went, the stranger things became.
What sounded like a rock clack. Jason sent me videos ahead of time what sounded like he thought it was a loud wood knock. To me, it almost sounded like a tree coming down right here. And he's told me many stories of seeing orbs, which is really interesting because he's not necessarily the orb type of guy. He's a Bigfoot, is flesh and blood type thing. So he's really just telling me how it is. This is what we've experienced and we have no idea what it is. Still, he 100% approaches it like Bigfoot is flesh and blood, walking around these forests like an upright primate.
Locals had warned him about unusual lights, smooth, floating orbs that shift through the timber in ways no flashlight or vehicle beam could. And these weren't stories from orb believers. They came from people who see Bigfoot as a physical creature, not something paranormal. For them, the orbs are simply another unexplained layer of the forest, something they can't explain but can't deny either. By morning, the tension of the night seemed to fade, until the valley answered back. While making coffee, Mike heard a massive crash somewhere behind camp, loud enough to echo through the valley and stop him mid-sentence. It wasn't a gentle tree fall or a loose branch dropping.
No visitors in the night, I don't think. I did leave my audio recorder out, so I'll listen to that. Wow. What a place to wake up to have all to yourself.
It was something significant hitting the ground hard. Landslides happen in the mountains, yes, but usually during rainfall or unstable weather. This morning, the forest was calm, so what could make a sound that heavy? Walking toward the direction of the impact, Mike admitted what every solo researcher eventually faces. He can't capture everything. Less than 1% of his time is actually filmed. The rest, the footsteps heard behind him, the knocks in the distance, the crashes before dawn, live only through his account.
I'm bringing my tent with me in case I find a spot that kind of feels. I always go to those places that kind of feel squatchy. Some people hate that word.
He spent the rest of the day pushing deeper into the valley, eventually hearing more wood-on-wood strikes as he hiked along the ridges. Sharp, fast, and varied. Not mechanical, not repetitive. Different tones, different distances. The kind of sounds that suggest movement, not coincidence. By the time he found a place to camp again, the knocks returned. Subtle, but unmistakable. Different rhythms, different intensities. Almost as if something was shadowing his presence from the trees.
It's really cool. These trees back here were just creaking and making all kinds of, spooky sounds and slowly moaning and stuff like that. It's easy to get carried away with your imagination. Usually when you're looking for something, you see it, right? You hear what you want to hear. If you're really excited coming out here looking for Bigfoot. I've seen it, I've done it, I've seen other people get super excited. They want to see Bigfoot, they want it to be big.
After days of climbing, listening, and documenting what he could, Mike finally reached the end of his journey. He didn't walk out with proof, but he walked out with something just as meaningful. Patterns, consistencies, and a deeper sense that Mystery Valley is alive with things the camera rarely catches, but the forest never fully hides. It's now time to break down one of the most hotly debated and strangely persuasive Bigfoot sightings of the modern era. And what makes this case particularly striking isn't that it comes from believers, but that it has impressed skeptics, researchers, and people who normally dismiss anything that smells of mystery. The encounter takes us back to May 2012, deep in the dense woods of Torreya State Park near Quincy, Florida. Two campers, retired Army Ranger Stacy Brown Sr. and his son Stacy Brown Jr., were out on a nighttime search for Bigfoot. Neither men were fringe believers. Brown Sr. was military trained, analytical, calm under pressure. His son was a filmmaker, grounded and practical. Together, they entered the woods not as fantasists, but as documentarians.
It's May 2012 near the town of Quincy, Florida. Retired Army Ranger Stacy Brown Sr., now deceased, and his filmmaker son Stacy Brown Jr. are camping in Torreya State Park on a search for the elusive Bigfoot.
That night, the forest didn't feel empty. They started hearing something. Movement on the right, then movement on the left. Not slow or timid, but purposeful. The kind of movement that makes experienced woodsmen listen twice. They switched on their FLIR thermal camera, expecting maybe a deer, a hog, or nothing at all.
They start hearing some noises, so they pull out their FLIR thermal camera and head off down a trail.
We would hear something running on our right, and then we would hear something running on our left, and it stopped real quick. And then Dad looked up at up there at the tree, and he's like,
On the thermal display behind a large tree, a dark, heat-radiating shape protruded. A shoulder, a head. Something was leaning out just enough to observe them. Before either man could fully grasp what they were seeing, the figure bolted, crossing an open gap in a single smooth motion. That moment, the mid-stride thermal silhouette became known as the money shot, a frame later compared to the iconic Patty look-back from the 1967 Patterson Gimlin film. Brown Sr. immediately panicked, an unusual reaction for a trained ranger. The camera died. They retreated straight to their truck. There, reviewing the footage for the first time, they realized they had captured something that looked nothing like a human.
Then it takes off and crosses this gap, and he goes into full-blown panic mode. The camera goes dead. He's like, we gotta go, we gotta go. He's like, do you got your gun? I knew exactly what we had on camera. It was proof to me and my dad, because who on a Tuesday night is a mile and a half into the woods running around with no flashlight?
And this is where skeptics started paying attention. Who, after all, wanders deep into a state park in complete darkness, a mile and a half from the nearest road, without a flashlight, without any reflective gear, running at speed through uneven terrain? If it were a prank, it would require a level of risk that borders on reckless stupidity. If it were a costumed hoax, the thermal camera should have revealed inconsistencies. Temperature patches, blocked heat signatures, cold zones where clothing masked body heat. But that didn't happen. Veteran Bigfoot investigator Steve Coles, known for debunking cases more than endorsing them, weighed in. Florida, he explained, has a long history of sightings. Not just of Bigfoot, but of its regional cousin, the skunk ape. Smaller in build, adapted to warm swamp climate, but otherwise nearly identical in behavior. Native Seminole and Muskogee tribes even had a name for it, Esti Kapkaki, the tall man, a forest guardian.
In Florida, they have something called the skunk ape, and there's been a lot of sightings over many years of what they describe as a Bigfoot type of creature. What they call that is the skunk ape, partly because it smells skunky. But for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing as a Bigfoot. It's not quite as big or robust as the ones in, say, the Pacific Northwest, but that is kind of expected due to the climate being a lot more tropical.
Could the Browns have captured this very creature? Then came the scientific angle. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, a respected anthropologist often cited by skeptics and believers alike, analyzed the thermal image. His assessment was surprisingly straightforward. If the figure were wearing clothing, a thermal camera should show cooler patches where fabric blocks heat. But in this footage, the heat signature was uniform. No breaks, no cold spots, no clear outline of clothing at all.
It was shot with a thermal imager, and so it's picking up the heat signature. Typically, if any clothing is being worn, it masks the intensity of the heat emanating from those covered parts of the body. Honestly, don't see any of that. It's just a pretty uniform signature that would suggest a body a la natural.
His implication was simple. This doesn't look like a dressed human. And that single comment pushed the footage into an entirely different category. Not confirmed, but not easily dismissed either. Even with all this, the conclusion can't be absolute. The camera was early generation of LIR, meaning detail is limited. The environment was pitch black. The figure was distant. All of that muddies perfect identification. But it also strengthens one point. If this was a human, it was a human behaving in a way no sensible person would behave. Silently, swiftly, half hidden, without light, without protection, and without clothing, detectable on thermal imaging.
It looks to be like a large primate, but it doesn't seem to match the body structure of the living apes, of chimpanzees or gorillas being the most prominent ones. It seems like its legs are too long, and when gorillas walk on their hind legs, they're not hunched over like that, they're more upright.
The way it comes out of the trees is what we call a Groucho walk. It's very typical of what witnesses say Bigfoot walks like.
In other words, if it was a hoax, it was a dangerous one. If it was a person, it was an inexplicable one. And if it wasn't either, then what exactly did the Browns capture? For now, the verdict stands where most credible researchers place it: unknown creature, not proven, but far from debunked, and absolutely worthy of further investigation. So after the knocks, the thermal figures, the crashes in the dark, and the stories that refuse to die, one question remains. If Bigfoot isn't real, then what exactly are people seeing? Until the next investigation, stay curious, stay alert, and remember, some things stay hidden because they want to. The sighting happened by complete accident. It was never part of the plan. On their way home from a week-long Bigfoot expedition in Colorado, the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization planned to return through Spanish Fork until a massive wildfire shut down the entire canyon. Traffic was diverted up Indian Canyon, a route they never use. And that single reroute became the reason one of the most startling encounters in their history occurred. As they drove upward, stuck behind diverted traffic, Kelly noticed 3 trucks on the roadside, each towing boats, with several people standing beside them, clearly confused and trying to figure out a new way home. Jenny was driving. Kelly was resting, exhausted from the expedition. But then, out of nowhere, he saw something across the draw. A massive, dark figure standing upright, nearly level with their line of sight. Kelly immediately recognized what he believed was a Bigfoot, around 9 to 10 feet tall, pitch black, broad with long legs and a domed head. It stood partially concealed by brush, staring directly at the people with the boats. From their angle, the people couldn't see it, but Kelly could. He started shouting for Jenny to pull over. At 45 to 50 miles per hour, she couldn't stop immediately. And by the time she reached the next turnout, Kelly grabbed his camera, jumped out, and sprinted back toward the sighting. But the creature had vanished. He scanned the mountainside, filming the entire time, hoping the camera would catch what his eyes no longer could. As he approached the spot where the boat crew had been, he realized they had already packed up and driven off, completely unaware of what had been watching them. Kelly had seen it clearly for 5 to 10 full seconds before it disappeared. He could see the gaps between its legs, both arms, and its wide frame. From his angle, it was completely visible. From theirs, it was naturally hidden. In the following days, multiple confirmations came in. A tanker truck driver reported seeing a similar giant black figure on the opposite side of the pass during winter. A Portals to episode featured a rider in nearby Duchenne who saw and chased a nearly identical creature months prior, a large black Bigfoot that outran his horse. Kelly and Jenny later returned to the site, combing the mountain for signs. Nothing explained what Kelly saw, except the possibility that the fire, the diversion, and timing all forced the creature into the open. A perfect storm for a brief but unforgettable encounter. On October 14, 2025, a big game hunter scouting near Nordegg, Alberta, set out to check an isolated stretch of wilderness, long known for unusual activity and whispers of Bigfoot sightings. Deep in the forest, he discovered a massive shelter-like structure built from snapped limbs and woven branches, far too large and too neatly constructed to be the work of local wildlife. Sensing something was off, he mounted a trail cam facing the structure and returned to camp. Hours later, his phone buzzed. The footage that appeared was short, shaky, and deeply unsettling. A towering dark figure moving between the trees, shoulders unnaturally broad, its silhouette heavy and deliberate. Whether it was a hoax or something real, the size alone was unlike any known animal. and just as quickly as the footage arrived, communication with the camera went dead. A week later, the hunter returned with a partner. They approached the location cautiously, expecting nothing more than a malfunction. Instead, the entire site had changed. The shelter was partially torn apart, the ground was disturbed, and the trail camera, the only device that captured the figure, was gone without a trace. Whatever walked past that camera didn't want to be filmed twice. This sighting comes from just a few days ago, November 20th, 2025. A deer hunter preparing for the late season hunt set up 2 game cameras on a remote hillside, one aimed toward the slope, the other toward a narrow trail along the ridge. For hours, everything looked normal. Deer wandered peacefully through the frame, grazing, pausing, and moving on. Exactly what the hunter expected. But then the ordinary stopped. From the steep hillside, a large bipedal figure emerged into view. At first, it appeared almost like a shadow moving across the tree line, until it stepped fully into the frame. Tall, dark, covered in thick hair, its posture upright, its gait unmistakably two-legged. And strangest of all, it seemed to be dragging something behind it. Bears don't walk like that. They don't move with that kind of weight distribution, and they certainly don't drag objects across steep terrain. Seconds later, the second camera, pointed at the hilltop trail, captured the creature from a different angle. The shape, size, and movement all match. Same height, same heavy stride, same unsettling impression that this wasn't anything known. Whether it's a hoax or something far more mysterious, the footage is undeniably strange. What do you think about walking across that ridge? Human testimony is an interesting thing. It's fallible, emotional, and easily dismissed. Anyone can lie, misremember, or fill in the blanks with imagination. But when dozens, even hundreds of people, separated by geography, background, age, and belief, start describing the same creature with the same behavior and the same physical details, you have to ask a different question. Are they all wrong? Or are at least some of them telling the truth?
So just to start, David, just state your name and just tell us a little bit about yourself and the museum.
Yep. So my name is David Becerra. I live up here in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and we opened this museum, my wife and I, in 2016. And I've been studying this since I was 12, just over 40 years.
Few people understand this better than David Becerra, founder of the expedition, Bigfoot Museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia. David has been studying the phenomenon for over 40 years. His interest sparked not by movies or myths, but by the nightly news in Miami during the 60s and 70s. Back then, he remembers seeing serious reporters talk about the Florida skunk ape, not as folklore, but as a real man-like creature roaming the wetlands. They described something huge and fast, far beyond the size or strength of any known ape. And for young David, who was just beginning to learn about evolution, anthropology, and early hominids, this created a mental collision he couldn't ignore. Either they weren't really seeing this animal, he says, or what they were teaching me in school was flawed. That contradiction stayed with him for life, and eventually led to a museum filled with eyewitness accounts, casts, photos, and stories from people who swear they've seen something walking the forests of North America.
And at that time, I was, in my schooling, I was learning about a little bit about anthropology and the theory of evolution, and I kept thinking how those two worlds were colliding hard. And even at that young age, I knew that somebody had to be wrong. Either they weren't really seeing this animal, or what they were teaching me in school was flawed. And I think that short circuit as a child kind of stuck with me, and I think that's what solidified it.
And David isn't the only one with a story that refuses to fade. Louisiana's own mountain man, known from Duck Dynasty, still remembers the night he and a friend heard something barreling through the creek bed behind them. Not a deer, not a bear, something with weight, snapping large branches like twigs. You could hear the feet, he said.
Been out that end, you could hear the feet sitting. Sound like somebody running. Man, this thing was breaking up some big sticks, and I said, I don't know about you, but I'm getting out of here. We took off like our rear ends was on fire, and we run up that hill to get away from him. I outrun him, and usually he can outrun me, but whatever was behind us, it was gonna have to eat him before it got to me the way I felt.
Sounded like somebody running. Big sticks breaking. I told him, I don't know about you, but I'm getting out of here. The two men sprinted up the hill, adrenaline pushing them faster than they'd ever run. Neither looked back, because whatever was in those trees felt close enough to touch. Mountain Man laughs now, but only because he outran his friend. Whatever was behind us, he says, it was gonna have to eat him before it got to me. Different states, different decades, different lives. Yet the details echo each other like a single story being retold through different mouths. And when testimonies start to overlap this clearly, you stop asking if something's out there and start wondering why it keeps showing itself.
When I was 9 years old, that happened in '74. And whatever, that fence row was growed up in rose bushes. It had a fence in the middle, but it was wild rose bushes all the way down it. He couldn't get through it, but he was on the other side of the fence. So I said, I told you, you better answer, you're scaring me. I said, I'll go on if you want me to. And then it just started throwing rocks. These rocks started coming over the fence. Whack, woof, wham, broken tree limbs, splat, bat. I said, okay. And all of a sudden it walked up and I seen this big hairy figure about 9.5 foot tall.
Some encounters come from deep forests, others from mountains, rivers, or hunting grounds. But sometimes, the most unnerving sightings happen on an ordinary stretch of road, when a witness least expects it. Lisa from At Lisa Sescapades is one of those witnesses. After years of travel, exploration, and documenting the outdoors, she didn't come looking for Bigfoot. In fact, she barely believed in the creature at all. Yes, back in 2012, she found large barefoot tracks in Washington state, prints that the BFRO even investigated, but the experience never shifted her worldview. At most, it left her thinking, maybe they exist, maybe they don't. That changed in August 2016, just north of Brooksville, Florida. Lisa was on the tail end of a long road trip, driving her rental van down Highway 98 around 6:30 p.m. The sun dipping low, the sky turning gold, the perfect time of day when shadows stretch across the pavement. And then, with nothing more than a glance into her rearview mirror, her life split into a before and an after. There, on the shoulder near the swamp line, something stood up. Not stepped out, not emerged. It stood up, as if it had been crouched and waiting for the right moment. Lisa froze, staring into the mirror, trying to process what she was seeing. A tall, reddish-brown figure stepping into the road with long, deliberate strides. 7 feet tall, she estimates. Thin, like a younger individual. Clearly bipedal, clearly massive, and clearly not a human being. She kept checking the hill ahead, expecting the cars cresting it to see the creature too. But the moment those headlights appeared, the figure reacted. With astonishing speed, it bolted into the pine forest on the opposite side, vanishing the moment the approaching vehicles would have had a clear view. Lisa drove on in stunned silence, her hands shaking. For 3 months after that night, she admits she was genuinely scared. Not because she was harmed, but because her understanding of the world had shifted in an instant. She went from maybe to absolutely. That single moment pulled her into a world of research, exploration, and investigation. And now, years later, she returns to that same road with the team. The swamp on one side, the pines on the other, retracing the exact path where something impossible crossed Highway 98. Because some sightings fade with time, but the real ones, they change everything. They say kids today are fearless, Bold enough to walk into mysteries most adults wouldn't dare to acknowledge, and in this case, they might be right. But before we get to the young cameraman's footage, we need to start with the man who unknowingly set the stage for it. In northwestern Pennsylvania, a seasoned hunter began noticing something deeply unsettling. For weeks, every time he entered the forest, he felt watched. Not the ordinary sense of being observed by wildlife, but a heavy, deliberate presence. A tall, dark silhouette appearing and disappearing over the ridgelines. Something keeping pace with him, hiding behind trees, peeking from behind boulders, always close enough to remind him he wasn't alone, but never close enough to identify. Concerned, and admittedly shaken, the hunter decided to figure out what was trailing him. Bear, stray humans, something else. He set up several trail cams throughout the hills and returned home, hoping to capture a clue. What he captured was more than he expected.
Well, that was in a different area. It wasn't here. Regular trail cam works on movement. What do they call that? Looking down over where you have a good view. Yeah. That's what I usually do. And I don't just go and put them in like where a bunch of stuff's in the way. I put them so I can get wide, wide view. Yeah. So you'll get like 12,000 photos, a day on it. In the summertime.
And how long do yours then? There was a tree there, and there was like a little head that popped out.
Right.
Remember that one?
Right.
And then it wasn't there in the next one. And those don't run off of infrared. They just take pictures.
One camera showed a massive, shaggy figure stepping out from behind the trees. Not running, not fleeing, but approaching. The creature moved right up to the lens and stared directly into it, almost like it was curious who had placed this strange little device in its forest. The photo was too clear, too close, too sharp to be brushed off as a leaf or a bird. You could see the hair, the shape, the face. It looked disturbingly close to what people describe as a Sasquatch, but the hunter wasn't the only one who captured something strange in Pennsylvania's woods. Now, the kid.
This is going to be the update on the Bigfoot sighting video I did yesterday. And there's a couple things I want to do this video. Like the comments were saying, I want to do some size comparisons, stand by the road rail, and try to get the same camera angle. And I want to try to walk its path, but before we do that, I want to go ahead and look for tracks and like broken trees or broken shrubs or anything that would indicate something big was going through there.
A young creator running the channel WH Outdoors placed his small camera deep in a wooded hillside around 2 p.m. overlooking a creek. He expected maybe some deer, maybe raccoons, certainly nothing extraordinary. He left the camera running for an hour. 35 minutes in, something stepped into the frame.
Okay, I think it might have been a little bit closer to the camera, but still, that's a pretty good size comparison. Before I kind of walk the length of where it is and kind of compare that, I want to go look for tracks and stuff. But remember, I don't know the exact track this thing led. There's a hill kind of right over here, and it could have been anywhere on the side of it.
The kid described it in his own words, raw and unpolished. What is this thing? It looked like it had something in its hands. Rocks from the creek or sticks. I put the camera down there for about an hour. I have no proof this was a Sasquatch besides the video and tracks I found on the follow-up. I ask you to keep an open mind.
Those footprints were much bigger than mine, and my boot was a size a size 13. So that can tell you some stuff. And I just don't think it was somebody. I think it was kind of something. But think what you want, keep your mind open, and stay safe.
The figure wasn't as massive as what most people imagine a Bigfoot to be, but it wasn't any known animal either. It moved on 2 legs. It carried objects. It had a soft sway in its walk, distinctly human-like, yet not human at all. When the kid uploaded the footage, viewers immediately noticed something remarkable.
Which I'm just gonna start from here. Just walk here. Wait. Yeah, it looked like it kind of went through here, and there's something here. It was like it ran up here And when it tried to come to a stop or something, it looked, or possibly, this may be not even what it is if the camera can see that. It looks like it's jotted down and up here. And there's another one right here.
His unfiltered honesty, his attention to detail, his willingness to admit what he didn't know.
As you can see, that's a big O comparison. So we think it came through here. And there's a game trail, if the camera can pick it up, going right through here. So, and it looks like something possibly came through here, and oh yeah, right here. Just think about whatever, but I mean, this is a young tree. As you can tell, it won't break off. Then this is also a young tree right here. It looks like something just came and stomped it or whatever.
His reenactments comparing his own height to the creatures were brilliantly done. His narration was calm, unbiased, and observational, more professional than many adult researchers. One commenter said it best: "This young man is 90% better than any researcher I've seen. If he keeps this up, he'll be one of the best documentary producers or cameramen that ever existed." 2 separate encounters, 2 different witnesses, but the same region, the same forests, the same unsettling feeling. Something big is watching the people of Pennsylvania, and sometimes it steps right into the camera frame. The YouTube channel D-Max UK is known for its bold explorations into the unknown. But one discovery stood out: a photograph of a hand that might have belonged to something extraordinary. It began when Bryce received an unusual picture. Someone had found what appeared to be a human-like hand, covered in hair yet ending in claws. Bryce looked closely at the image and said quietly, "I've never heard of Bigfoot having claws, but that certainly looks like a human, hairy hand."
He goes on to say, "I threw it back into the woods, but it wasn't until then that I realized what I may have had in my possession." You know, I've never heard any cases or people describing Bigfoot with claws, but I mean, that certainly looks like a human hairy hand. I think this is worth showing to the team.
He decided to share it with the rest of the team. When they saw the photo, their reactions were a mix of surprise and confusion. But the claws changed everything. Primate hands don't have claws, they have nails. This was something else entirely. Bryce asked his teammate Ronnie if he had ever heard of Bigfoot stories describing claws. Ronnie said that accounts were mixed. Some people claimed Bigfoot's hands looked human, while others swore they had claws for protection or climbing. No one really knew. The mystery deepened, and Bryce decided more research was needed.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah, strange, right?
If you stop short of the claws, it actually looks like a human hand.
Yeah.
But then primates don't have claws, we have fingernails.
I mean, do you think that could be a bear?
Or a wolf or a coyote?
We're thinking this thing is bigger than what it is. I mean, this could be a raccoon's hand, right?
If you look at the knot on the plastic bag, it gives you a slight reference, so it does look big.
The crew moved into the forest, following a faint trail that looked like something large had passed through recently. As they walked, they looked for signs: footprints, broken branches, or even nests. Researchers believe Bigfoot may build 2 types of structures: nests made of woven branches and tree formations bent and arranged in strange patterns. These, some say, could be markers or signs of communication.
These are large branches, or sometimes entire trees, arranged in unnatural patterns. Oftentimes they appear like teepees, but have been reported to take on a variety of shapes. There are several theories as to what purpose they serve.
When it comes to tree structures, there's some different schools of thought. A lot of researchers, including myself, believe they're a form of communication. These are almost like road signs.
Then came a smell. Sharp, musky, like wet fur. One of them whispered, "That's bear." The team froze. They realized they might have wandered too close to a bear den hidden in the rocks. For a moment, the mission shifted from mystery to survival. Still, the question lingered in everyone's mind. What was that hand? Human? Animal? Or something that lives hidden in the woods, just out of reach, waiting to be found?
As I got closer, that smell got real strong.
Yeah.
We seem to have stumbled upon a bear den on the trail, and it has me on high alert.
I'm waiting for something to pop up right behind those rocks.
We've been at this for hours here.
Yeah.
And this trail seems to go on forever. We are up against an incredibly dense population of black bears here, and we can see that this trail goes on for miles and miles. Why don't we call it a night? It's just too dangerous. Can't keep going.
Welcome to Cabin in the Woods, a channel that dives into the eerie world of folklore and unsolved mysteries. The creator tackles long-standing enigmas, none more famous than the Patterson Gimlin film. While many call it a man in a suit, he presents chilling evidence that what Patterson and Gimlin captured in 1967 was no hoax. Step by step, he unveils evidence that forces viewers to confront a much darker reality. The analysis begins by challenging everything we know about human movement. The creator explains how the creature's distinct bent knee propulsion and gait would be impossible for any human, especially in a bulky suit.
First of all, we have biomechanics and gait. According to anthropologist and primate expert Dr. Jeff Meldrum, the bent knee propulsion that we see from the creature in the film would be impossible, or at the very least highly impractical, for a human being. We're just not built to propel ourselves forward with that bent knee stride that you see from the creature in the film.
He then highlights the stride length, measured at 41 inches from the footprints left behind. This isn't just a long step, it's a smooth, powerful gait that even a tall human would struggle to mimic without looking awkward, starkly contrasting the graceful, natural movement captured in the grainy footage.
The footprints cast by Patterson and Gimlin after they filmed the creature had a 41-inch stride length on average, which is a much longer stride than an average human could comfortably copy, even a taller than average human. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall. I attempted some 41-inch strides before making this video. I just wouldn't look nearly as graceful as the subject of the film does, even at my height and with rather long legs. It's just not doable for human beings.
The investigation then moves from the creature's walk to the very anatomy beneath its skin, or fur. We are shown that in the stabilized footage, one can clearly see muscles flexing and moving with each step.
We're pretty good at making realistic monkey and monster suits nowadays, but we still haven't mastered the ability to recreate authentic muscle movement, the flexing and changing of shape and hardness of muscles that we see beneath the skin of real creatures, ourselves included. But in the Patterson Gimlin film, you can clearly see that we have flexing calf muscles as the creature propels itself forward with each footstep. We see flexing thigh muscles, we see glute muscles changing and flexing.
The narrator highlights the visible flexing of calf, thigh, and even back muscles, a level of detail that special effects experts of the time, and even today, would find nearly impossible to recreate in a suit. The argument is simple and terrifying. Suits don't have muscles, but living creatures do.
In fact, according to two different veteran Hollywood special effects specialists, Bill Munns and John Chambers, the sort of muscle flexing beneath the skin quality that we see in the Patterson Gimlin film would be extremely difficult and most likely impossible for a human being in a suit to replicate.
Next, the analysis focuses on the creature's proportions, which defy human anatomy.
It's obvious to anyone who has seen the film that the arms of the subject are a lot longer in proportion to its body length than the arms of a human. In fact, several recreation attempts with humans in suits have failed for just this reason, because the arms of the human in the suit always look comically short in comparison to the actual Patterson Gimlin film.
Its arms are far longer in proportion to its body than a human's, and they swing with a natural smoothness that suggests real limbs, not prosthetics hidden in sleeves. The entire skeletal structure, from its torso to leg ratio to the length of its limbs, points not to a disguised man, but to something else entirely.
The next reason the film is authentic is the behavioral realism we see from the creature. If it were just a man in a suit, he probably wouldn't have acted so nonchalant. But instead, we have this creature slowly, nonchalantly walking away from the camera, turning once to glance back at the men filming her.
The most unsettling evidence lies in the creature's behavior. This isn't the act of an actor playing a monster. It's the instinctive response of a wild animal caught off guard, viewing the humans not as a threat, but as something to observe before slipping back into the safety of the wilderness.
To put it another way, the creature's body language in the film doesn't seem forced. It seems natural. It really does appear like an animal in its native environment, moving easily and comfortably through that environment.
Finally, the creator dismantles any lingering doubt by listing the numerous respected scientists, physical anthropologists, primatologists, and biomechanics experts who have studied the film and concluded that the subject is a genuine, non-human primate.
Dr. Grover Krantz, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who we already mentioned, Dr. Dmitry Donskoy, Dr. Esteban Sarmiento, Dr. John Napier, and Dr. Henner Fahrenbach. 6 solid pieces of evidence for the Patterson-Gimlin film's authenticity.
The weight of this expert testimony transforms the film from a piece of folklore into a potential scientific document. The video leaves us with a deeply unsettling conclusion, but the evidence presented points to a far more disturbing truth. We can debate the footage forever, but the question remains, what happens when it's not on camera, but standing right in front of you? And just like that, the forest keeps its secrets. For now, every sound, every shadow could be watching, waiting. If you thought you saw it all tonight, think again. Bigfoot's world is far bigger and darker than we can imagine. Make sure to hit subscribe, because in the next chapter, we'll follow the trail deeper into the unknown, where few dare to go. Until then, keep your eyes open and your footsteps quiet.